Okay, we have to start because we only have 35 minutes, what I found out. So I will have to speak faster, and your question should be also faster, so as fast as possible. Yeah, my name is Alan Bean, I'm a freelancer, still enjoy Java, and for 2 years I take MicroProfile more seriously, and I do Java EE or Jakarta EE for probably from the beginning. Yeah, I started before Java EE and with Java since 1997. And no, 1995, since 1997, I'm a freelancer. And I never worked for a company, so whatever I did is actually not working, it's just having fun. Now, I have a blog, which is a notepad. AXIO are online courses. TV is probably the most interesting for you. If you have questions, I answer the question once a month. And but the deal is I don't answer technical questions via email because it's undoable. And AXFM is a podcast, so I pick people who, because I never have time on conference to talk with people, so I do it via podcast. Now, why I enjoy Java? Probably because this is what I like to do, is I just learn something once and try to keep doing this. And this is why I actually talk about the same stuff over and over again, actually for 20 years. And I'm still invited to conferences, which is remarkable. So, for instance, I started with J2E. So we did back then, lots of interfaces, XML, and over time I just show how you can delete stuff from the project. So it got leaner, and now there's almost nothing there. So if you have a Jakarta EE or Java EE project, there is just a couple of business classes, and the infrastructure is not visible. And the same I'm doing in the web space. I'm just focusing on standards. So now, and this is one of the reasons why I completely ignored MicroProfile, because from my point of view, it was something new which will probably disappear. But it didn't happen. Why not? Because the MicroProfile developers and server developers, or server and Jakarta EE developers of the server runtimes are sometimes even the same people, the same developers. And most of Jakarta EE runtimes support MicroProfile at the same time. So in my project, it means it's heaven. Why? I don't have to ask for permission. I can just take whatever server I have and run Jakarta EE with MicroProfile on top of it. So this is what I usually do. So I always, in all my projects right now, I can use full Jakarta EE plus MicroProfile. And even better, the developers don't even know what is what. So they just use whatever's on the server, how it should be, and they don't ask me, should we use MicroProfile or should we use Jakarta EE? I tell them, do whatever you have, but don't add any external dependencies. If you have any questions, ask the questions. We only have half an hour. So everything crystal clear so far? So what it basically means is I don't think I ever did a project with MicroProfile only. So probably by accident that we just use JAX-OS with CDI, but and didn't use EGPs or something. Usually I use everything what's available. And by the way, this is also nothing new. So the most popular frameworks outside of JavaScript, like Rails or whatever, they always provided, I would say, complete experience for the developers. So it's not like you had to download Rails and then download 500 modules to be productive. You were productive from day 0 or minute 0. So there are 2 slides I actually am proud of, because I usually don't create a lot of slides, but I would like actually to tell you how I'm thinking about, or explain how I'm thinking about Jakarta EE or MicroProfile and how to be successful, or what frameworks have to do to be successful, in order to be successful. I think the time to first commit, or time to hello world, is the most important thing. So if we start a project and we will have to install the whole server in 2 hours, no one will use it. And if it is fast, the first impression is very good. And this is one of the reasons probably why I would say almost, right now, is more than 50% of my clients are actually startups. And they don't care about Jakarta EE, Java EE, or MicroProfile. They would like to have something productive which runs and does not change a lot in future. That's the only thing. Because if you are building products, no one is interested in migrating your product back and forth. So you would like to focus on your problem and not on the framework. And so this is mostly true if you are pragmatic and have to earn money. And some companies are more about funky programming and forget about the problem. So this is where something like Jakarta EE or MicroProfile will never fly. There is a new buzzword, what I didn't know about, but is absolutely with my thing, is run less software. So run-less software means the more variants you have, the more unique your infrastructure gets, the more complicated gets the whole stuff. If you have a small team, not a lot of budget, why you should run 50 different technologies at the same time to see Hello World on the screen? So usually what we try to do is this is actually run-less software is the exact opposite of polyglot programming, what I never got. If I have 5 developers, why am I 5 developers? Everyone should pick different programming language just for fun. If there's a reason, do it. But usually with Java, there are not that many reasons to pick something else, except it is boring for you, and you would like to try something else or do it, but why you are doing this in commercial project? So focus on solving real problems. It means we start just with plain code. We forgot patterns. We forget whatever doesn't matter actually for the clients or for the users, and if there is a problem, we solve it. But this is actually agile, right? Whatever you can decide later, done. This is the definition of agile for me. And so there is no reason for upfront design and patterns, whatever, everything is gone. So be fast. So then the most important thing, separation of domain and business logic from the infrastructure. So if your business logic depends on a crazy infrastructure, or even worse, on a custom framework, you are in trouble over time. Because what happens is, if your developers switch projects or get new developers, they probably don't know about the infrastructure thing, and you will lose. With Jakarta EE or MicroProfile, you are almost not dependent on anything except of view annotations. And it is fairly easy to migrate to something else. Why? Because we migrated recently, as proof of concept, some old J2E projects to something like Quarkus to see whether it works, and it worked. And how problematic it was, it cost about 5 hours. So it was more, I would say, more mechanical process, search and replace and remove private, but the project was reasonable, not a lot of external dependencies. Boring is good. So what it means is, if you can, you say, again, there's actually the same stuff, and I just have to focus on business logic, it's a very good sign. And the most important thing is you are not Google, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, what I forgot, actually Netflix. Yeah, this was today morning. So I actually wanted to say Netflix, and Netflix is a funny story. As you probably know, there was a very famous framework called Hystrix. And I didn't use it a lot, and I actually never used that. I have to say, I look at this, okay, it could be interesting, but most of the Hystrix concepts are available on application server anyway. What you should know, Netflix didn't have application server, so they built everything from scratch. And I say, okay, in my project, I want to use Hystrix, and someone says, you are completely wrong, and Netflix is right, because they have the cloud native experience, and because Netflix is right, what they did, they killed Hystrix. So now, the programming model of Hystrix was not that easy, I would say. It was like lots of bloat in my eyes, so you had to build command patterns, and you had to configure your factories. And some project had a huge migration effort, to migrate from Hystrix to nothing. And why? Because they wanted to be like Netflix. But what they already had, they had application servers. Hystrix didn't have the application servers. Hystrix does streaming, video streaming. My companies did just, create, read, update, delete with a boring database. So what it means is the decision was completely wrong. So in MicroProfile, we get fault tolerance patterns with a view annotations. And this could be implemented by Hystrix or not, I don't care. So I just use as a developer an API, and how it's implemented, I have no idea. And this is actually the good thing. The business logic and the implementation are separated. Questions? Everyone agreed? Strange. Okay, usually no one agrees with me. So Jakarta EE, even worse. So I would say this is this distributed computing native platform. It's not cloud native, distributed computing native. And I have to admit, I was in lots of task forces with Jakarta and Java, and it's always like this. We run in a cluster, and developers forgot that we are in clusters, so they try to access local file system, build singletons to synchronize things, or they find out that the schedule is not unique in the cluster, or that the key generator is not unique because the singletons are distributed. And by the way, if you build old Jakarta EE or Java EE applications in the right way, you would be cloud native, because there will be no assumptions that you are running, that you have access to your local file system. You wouldn't try, to be a singleton in a cluster. And by the way, even funkier, developers really hated EGB programming restrictions. So there was like in the spec programming restriction, they're not allowed, to load classes on demand. You are not allowed, to use synchronize and static. And if you would follow these restrictions, you would be not only cloud native, the whole dynamic class loading would help you also to be compatible with GraalVM actually. So what we could actually do, to find the old boring and Java EE programming restrictions, apply them to today. Of course, we named it because no one cares about Jakarta EE coding guidelines or something, and we would be cloud native by definition. So what it means is what was lacking, of course, is the idea that we have one server, one application. So there was the idea of deployment, and what I wanted to say is the old boring programming restrictions still apply to the cloud. So for me, it's not a lot difference if thinking to running Jakarta or MicroProfile on Kubernetes or OpenShift than it was 10 years ago to create our own clusters. We had the same or very similar problems like synchronization, locking, and stuff like that. Still agreed? This is a unique agreement because usually if I mention EGBs, everyone say, okay, go away, this is nothing, this is not modern, but actually the ideas were good. And probably we don't need no IOP anymore, and we don't need IOP, but we have gRPCs, which is very similar, but it's a different story. So Genau is exactly what caused trouble in cluster will also cause trouble in the clouds. So reasonable Jakarta applications are running in the clouds out of the box. So what it means is the idea that you have thin walls with no external dependencies. If you relied on APIs, what probably you did, you had a custom configuration framework, so you can replace that with add inject config property. Or you probably build your own logging framework because everyone did that in one point of time. So you can delete the framework and even use no system out print line because no one cares anymore about logging. So this is the log aggregator's log for you. But the ideas, it will work in the cloud if you are reasonable. But the more relied on external funky frameworks, the more problematic it gets. So hard separation between runtime and logic, we had that. And MicroProfile, for me, what's the difference between Jakarta EE and MicroProfile? For me, so I'm not, anyway, so I would like to contribute to MicroProfile or Jakarta EE, but too lazy or never managed to do something meaningful with them. But as a Java developer, observer from the outside, for me, Jakarta EE about the Java standards, like abstractions from products. So we have JMI, CDIs is more like Java syntax. And MicroProfile, if you look at the MicroProfile, they just implement cloud native foundation, or most of them, CNCF standards. So if you look at Open Metrics, it's actually Prometheus, is MicroProfile metrics. Open API is Swagger, is MicroProfile Open API. Open tracing, also a standard, Jaeger tracing, so MicroProfile can use Jaeger tracing or Zipkin, and Kubernetes liveness and readiness probes is MicroProfile Health. Then build and deployment, so this add inject config properties works exactly as you would expect from Docker or Kubernetes. And microservice patterns are not standards because are patterns, but they are actually the Hystrix patterns are implemented one-to-one in MicroProfile without any external dependency. So this is one of the reasons why MicroProfile has to iterate faster in my eyes, because the cloud native foundation and all these specs are moving faster, and there should be alignment. Hopefully this is right observation. There are multiple MicroProfile people. It's completely wrong what I'm saying? No, there was no, completely wrong? You say? No. So someone says completely wrong, say yes, okay, no. Cool. So what it means is, in my regular project, I need actually both. So Jakarta EE for the boring Java stuff, and MicroProfile for the good and tight integration with OpenShift, Kubernetes, EKS, Azure, or whatever. Actually, in my current project, we are running the stuff on Azure, AWS, and OpenShift private clouds, and in one project, plain Kubernetes. But this is an exception. Usual OpenShift, I don't know why, is very distributed or very popular in larger companies. Kubernetes plain is one project. OpenShift is, of course, Kubernetes. And other projects are running in Docker containers, smaller project, just in Dockers. But I have no project right now which runs on bare metal. So interesting. So everyone moved to something like container. I got a question in the recent Airhacks TV. Someone asked me, they are not allowed to use Docker. What you will do? So okay, then I saw the unique use case. You can run fat jars. This makes sense. Questions? Oh, yeah, just slides today, right? No questions? So what about the experience? So set up Jakarta EE project, and I call it Sun because we have Eclipse, so there should be always something different. So Eclipse of the Sun probably, right? So we go here, Sun, and I just open it with an editor. And what you see first is this is the setup in all projects I have. I actually set this allowed to access my Graal VM. And what you can see is this is not only a conference setup, I only have this actually. This is how it looks like always in my case. So this is the very first thing, should be simple. This is the build. So in my POM, what is not allowed, super POMs, external dependencies, the only thing which is allowed is this. And what you are allowed as developer, of course, to have, external test dependencies. So we have JUnit, Mockito, but we never have something like rest assured. We don't need it. We use JAX-REST clients for that. So if you have just this, it will build fast and run fast. Questions? Still no questions? So this is where the war starts. To say how you can not have any super POMs, because why I need a super POMs? We don't have any external dependencies. What you would like to declare in my super POM? So the easier it gets, the better it is. So my archetype is on GitHub, and it's why I created the archetype is just because nothing else was as simple as this. So whatever I found on Apache was more complicated than that. They always try to do some additional dependencies. This is all you need. Jakarta EE 8 and MicroProfile 3, some runtimes only support with MicroProfile 2, which is not that bad. This is not that much difference, I would say, for developer. Okay, so now, no questions so far. Still amazing. So what is the optimization right now? So first, what it basically means. So we have, I think, 15 minutes left or something. So very quickly, what's the optimization? First, if you think about this, the only thing which you will see from outside is the REST endpoint, right? If you only see the REST endpoint with JSON, what is the most important thing to do the JSON in the REST endpoint right? Everything else doesn't matter, really. So what it means is, forget about exception hierarchies, interfaces, factories, qualifiers. Whatever you do is probably too complicated. So write a simple, small classes, Java classes, POJOs, with the business logic, put a view MicroProfile or Jakarta EE annotations on it, and it will be probably the best possible design. And this is nothing else than Agile. If you don't have problems right now, you won't solve them. So what it means is, we can actually expose a Java class with JSONB directly via REST. Okay? So now we have this, as you can see, add inject config property. This comes from MicroProfile, and the rest comes from both, actually, from MicroProfile or Jakarta EE. And there is one configuration which says I have the entry point of resources. And so what it means is convention of a configuration from Jakarta EE, by the way. My service name is would be localhost 8080/sun/resources/ping. So let's try that. So I will probably start Liberty. This is an Open Liberty server from IBM now. And but it really doesn't matter. And as you can see, I just started with MicroProfile 3.0. In my project, I have both. I have installed Jakarta EE 8 or I think the feature is still Java 8 and MicroProfile, so both at the same time, because we need everything. So if I would start Payara, which can I also do? So the Payara, it starts and it comes with everything. So this will start with MicroProfile 3.0 and Jakarta EE 8. And the only thing which is not well supported is Whitefly from Red Hat. So they have Jakarta EE 8 everything and MicroProfile 80%, I would say. Okay? But what you can do, if you have a Whitefly, you can download a small RAI and patch Whitefly to have full MicroProfile support. And this is the first hack. What you can do, there's a project small RAI, and the small RAI project comes with, it's like a polyfill for MicroProfile. So if your server doesn't support MicroProfile specs, you can always patch it with small RAI. At least it worked for Whitefly very well. For me, we patched JSON Web Token, fault tolerance in the past, but the Whitefly 18 now supports more and more. Still no questions? Okay, how to deploy? So what I did, I created a small project, and the idea came in a JavaScript workshop. It is called Watch and Deploy. A little bit inspired by Seek and Destroy, but Watch and Deploy is nicer. So, and what it does is it just watches changes in my local file system, and on every change in a file system, it just invokes Maven Clean install and copies the file to somewhere. And in my case, is to everywhere. So if I go here and say what sh, so then it will it finds here, this is the old Wi-Fi 17, Open Liberty 19, which is wrong. I will have to, this is won't fly now. I have 1910 already, and Payara. So what it basically means is, so if I go here and say localhost curl localhost 8080, this is now Glassfish, Sun, resources, and ping, I should see something which is enjoy Jakarta EE with MicroProfile. So, and the deployments are actually fairly fast. I would say the fastest one from the old runtimes is Open Liberty, and then I would say Tommy, Open Liberty, Tommy is roughly the same. Glassfish a little bit slower, and slower means Glassfish starts and deploys in around 3 seconds, Open Liberty 2 seconds, and Tommy is in between. And in recent projects, on my machine it deployed in 3 seconds, on my client's machine in 30 seconds. But it was the most secure deployment ever. There are 2 virus scanners. One scanned the JVM and the other one the server, and this slowed down everything. So if your deployment takes slower than 5 seconds, look at your virus scanner, always. This is always the case. So it is actually, there are no servers which are slow anymore. Except, how to call it, I won't call it. So there's one classic server, but you will find this in German museum, I would say. This is no more widely used. So actually 2 large servers, I would say, right? Yeah, one is almost forgotten and the other one is called classic. So, questions? Questions? Now, I could hack something for you, but when I look, there's lots of no MicroProfile committers, why I should show you how MicroProfile works. You wrote it by yourself, so but instead of that, some tricks. How to deploy this to the cloud. So this is my stock Jakarta EE project, and what I like to do is Payara micro right now, just for fun, and call it Sun. And what it does is, hopefully, so it always depends whether my IP address is working or not, it will deploy that to Kubernetes, Minishift console. And it should be already available. Not yet, now it's available. This is Sun AirHacks, this is my newest URI. And the question is, what happened behind the scenes? And this is called source to image. This is a possibility in OpenShift to build or Ruby, Python, and Node.js, and of course Java applications to set up them on Kubernetes. And this is what we do in production, because this S2I, what you can do is you can configure the whole runtime. You can inject certificates, configure data sources, configure GMS and whatever like. And so now I have my system running on Kubernetes. So what it means is, if I open this here, hopefully, and go to Sun resources ping, then I should see enjoy Java 8. Now, this cloud native configuration means what I told you. Let's try that. I have MicroProfile config is message enjoy, and let's say I go here to my Kubernetes. Where is it? Yeah. And what I could do, I can go to deployments, Sun, and environment, and say message, and say enjoy Sun. Save. What should happen is, it deploys the pod new pod comes up with, hopefully, wait a second, liveness and readiness probes are lacking, so I don't know whether. Now it's destroyed. No, enjoy Sun. So what happened behind the scenes is I just use out of the box, no dependency Jakarta EE application deployed to OpenShift using Payara S2I, the slowest possible deployment. What happened behind the scene? The whole server was built. So it's not like I just was a hot deployment. It was rebuilt and pushed to Docker. So now the question is, what means now the optimization? The optimization means, oh, by the way, of course, scalability, and this is not even Quarkus. So this is, this is orders of magnitude larger than Quarkus. What I can do also, look at that. So I can say, if I need scaling, then go here. So, and I could actually say, OC scale DC sun minus replicas 2, and we get 2. Hopefully, now we're 2. It's a little bit slower than that, so the scaling is faster than a Pyara S2I, because this S2I, I had to rebuild the whole server. Now I'm starting a new server. Now the load balancer was reconfigured, and we have more or less cluster without cluster, 2 independent Pyara services. So, questions about that? No questions. So we have 10 minutes. So now, I was invited to a company called Belastungsdienst. No one will talk it, name it in Germany. Belastungsdienst is like charging service, and this is the finance department in Dutch, in Netherlands. And they do also some cloud native stuff. And another speaker was Bert Erdmann. I'd never met him in person, and he just stolen his slides. And what he did is, and he's very courageous, because they say, what we did, everyone complained that the application servers are fat. So there's the virtual machine, and the app servers shipped everything. And with Spring Boot and fat jars, so I would write fat jar, and he wrote Spring Boot, which is a little bit offensive. So forget Spring Boot, just focus on fat jars. So with the fat jars, what it actually means is you are repackaging the whole jar, so it's getting larger and larger, and you're pushing the jars to the cloud. Also, only a fraction was changed. Agreed? So it doesn't make any sense. So therefore, optimizing for clouds means what the future is the clear separation between business logic and infrastructure. So the infrastructure is pushed to the clouds whenever your infrastructure changes. In my current case, 4 times a year. This is when we get new MicroProfile release, or Jakarta release, or Glassfish release, or MicroProfile release. So if I would ship the whole jar, fat jar, to the cloud all the time, I will have to ship 20 to 50 megs of every commit to the cloud, and this is going to be heavy. By the way, the slides are from Bert Erdmann. So this is from him, this is not the reference, okay? Now, so I had 3 slides in total. So now, why this is a problem? So first, deployment is performance is a problem, and I will, wait a second, let's try to show you Docker. So with the Docker, I will just use Pyara here. Pyara. I think I have Wildfly, but let's maybe clean. Install, full build, Docker build, -d, Eclipse, Sun, nice. So, let's see what happens. And it works. So Docker images, Eclipse/Sun, and we see the image is built, and the images are half a gig big. You can say, okay, crazy, you are talking, half an hour about how lightweight it is, and it is half a gig, but the Docker history, Eclipse Sun, and as you can see, so I was actually lazy. So the base layer is 2 years old. This is CentOS 7, I think. And then 10 months ago, I installed properly OpenJDK, and 25 seconds ago, I deployed 4K. So my Jakarta EE plus MicroProfile service is 4 kilobytes. So if I will, in all my projects, the wars are significantly smaller than 1 meg. So try to write 300 kilobytes of business logic. Mission impossible. I mean, this is why you spend a lot of time. So the smaller the war, the faster deployment. And what also happens, we get more and more security scanners in the Jenkins pipeline. The funny story is, in some pipelines, they had to move away completely from fat jars because they couldn't accomplish a successful scanning. Whatever they scanned, it was not successful. The cool story is, with Jakarta EE and MicroProfile, they can scan whatever they like, because they never will find anything, because my war is empty. It only contains business logic. This is my hollow jar, or whatever, however you call it. So the question is now, okay, but who scans, the infrastructure? And the answer is easy. If you are running open source, hopefully someone in your company is in charge of patching your runtime. And if not, we have commercial support from IBM, Red Hat, in the most serious projects, and we get patches from them. So the separation is very important for me. Now, what is also the evolution? Something like Quarkus is also very interesting. So we have 3 minutes left, so you forgot to show me. Yeah, exactly. So now, wait a second. Create. Sunny. This is Quarkus, just as an idea. And Sunny. Yes. So if I would build the Quarkus thing, so what happens behind the scenes, the build will be slow, and of course, forget the tests, so you can deactivate them. So the build is slow, and the result is something interesting, because if you take a look on the jar here, you see that the runner jar is 190K, which is significantly larger than my war, and in the lib, you see all the libs from, actually, most of them are from Wi-Fi, so lots of libs. Now, the cool story is, this jar here references to the lib. So if I run the Quarkus, and so Java minus jar runner, so it started, and the interesting part is what Quarkus did. They have still this separation between business logic and infrastructure, and what they recognize is that in modern age the application servers are so small, so there is no more reason to have shared deployments. So if there will be never two wars on one runtime, why we should have deployment in the first place, dynamic deployment? And what they just did is they built the stuff, or they deploy at build time. And the cool story is I get most of the CDI errors at build time. And at runtime, the server doesn't know even about deployment. The whole, the deployment mechanism is not available at runtime, and therefore Quarkus is very small. So I would say this is not a fat jar. I call it skim jar because it's it's not a hollow jar. Hollow jar would mean I have an application server which deploys something, and there's no deployment. It just launches your business logic. You are launching your business logic, and the business logic refers to the infrastructure. Okay. So what do you do on Docker? We are already running one Quarkus project in production. So the lib folder is a Docker layer, and the jar we just push all the time. So we're pushing 50 times a day, 190K, but not, I don't know how big the lib is. Usually it would be 20 to 50 megs. Okay? At least one question. 2 minutes for questions. There was no hacking, but I would show you the trivial. No, I would show you circuit breaker, whatever. I just tried to explain you why it matters and why it is really interesting in the clouds. Yeah. What?
Which MicroProfile features do you feel is mostly used?
A mostly used MicroProfile feature. So the most popular one is, of course, OpenAPI, because the companies are forced to expose the Swagger, which I'm against, because most of the Swagger, what I see, is worthless. What developers are doing, HTTP get customers, and you see in Swagger get customer. So okay, great. Or I see explanation HTTP status 500, and then as explanation in Swagger, internal server errors. Like, wow, this is a really helpful. So the quality of Swagger is exactly the same as Javadoc, but Swagger is most popular. The config is also popular because we remove custom frameworks, configuration frameworks with that, so it's very popular. Most important from my point of view is metrics. MicroProfile metrics is the most important for microservices. It's completely ignored in most projects because most projects do not care about metrics. Why not? But because there is no product manager or product owner who has a user story for metrics in Agile. If there are no user story, no one implements that. But after task forces, we always get metrics. And for MicroProfile metrics, the most important one is just counter. To count successes and failures. This is the most important one, and the timed and counted, not that. Then fault tolerance is a very nice one. This is not widely used usually because it works without, right? But something like timeout, extremely important. I would see bulkheads, very important. Circuit breaker in enterprise project, less important, but yeah. So I would say Distributed tracing is getting momentum because most of the project build their own infrastructure with logging and correlation ID, and with distributed tracing you can completely eliminate that. And of course, completely forgot, one of the most important was JSON Web Token, of course, because we have JavaScript clients and they have to talk to the servers, and with JSON Web Token is perfectly solved. And usually we use Keycloak. In one project we use Microsoft something generates for us the JSON Web Token, and JSON Web Token also very popular or very important to authenticate between microservices. Otherwise, I get always question of where to store username and password, and JSON Web Token doesn't. I think this is how I see it. You can impress the most developers with elimination of Swagger with OpenAPI, and metrics is very important, but yeah, you know how the projects are working, so it's like not always reasonable. Yeah, and CDI JSON-B on JSON-P, this is not MicroProfile, we consider Jakarta EE, so I didn't mention that. This is used everywhere. So CDI, JAX-RS, JSON-B is coming. With JSON-B, we are eliminating DTOs and all the mappers, so it's very important. Okay, any other question?
What's your view of the reactive programming model?
Reactive programming model is very cool if there is something reactive. So the reactive is widely overused. Let's see, in most projects they use reactive programming model to have request response with HTTP. In my case, it doesn't make any sense. But if you have something like MQTT or Kafka, completely different story. Because you have one stream coming in, and you can map it easily incoming, outgoing with MicroProfile, and map, for instance, a Kafka event to JMS event with 2 annotations. So I'm all for it. So what I'm against, to playing with reactive, what I see at conferences sometimes talks like I wait 5 events, then I'm warm, and then do something else. It never happens to me in my projects. So either we process everything or nothing. It's not like the most use cases is just I don't know, not even Hello World, is complete science fiction. But if you have something like Kafka or GMS, it makes absolute sense because it's easier. Or WebSockets, right? So you can map MQTT to WebSockets. In my case, so it's very important that MicroProfile does that. Okay, thank you. I have to stop.
Yes.
You have the power. Sorry. If you have questions, come later.